There's only so many times that I can glaze the PS2 before people finally get sick of hearing about it. After all, I do tend to cover a lot of PS2 games on this channel. But today we're going to take a look back even further than the PS2 at the PlayStation 1, a console that was one of the pioneers of 3D when it came to gaming. The PS1 was, after all, the birthplace of many franchises that are still ongoing to this very day, such as Resident Evil, Crash Bandicoot, and of course Silent Hill, one of my personal favorites. Personally, I actually feel that PS1's 2D entries are just as important as 3D offerings though, such as Castlevania Symphony of the Night and Metal Slug X. This console had a lot of good things going for it. It's no mystery though that the PS1 was home to probably some of the most influential and well-known RPGs of all time, such as Final Fantasy VII, Xenogears, Breath of Fire 3, and many more. This console rivals the Super Nintendo in that regard, and it continued a long lineage of franchises that had made their mark in history. At the time, the almost undisputed king of RPGs was Square Enix, and they were churning out RPG legends on the regular and gave us some of the greatest games ever made, including a certain one you might have heard about once or twice in my videos. Okay, roll the clip. There were a few that could keep up with Square Enix in terms of RPGs back then, though a few tried and even had modest success, but as the years went on, other companies would begin to find great success in the RPG space, and steal a lot of Square's spotlight. Games like Namco Bandai's Tales series gaining lots of praise, along with many other contenders entering the ring, such as the beloved Atlas making the Persona franchise. Square Enix may not be the giant in terms of RPG prowess that they once were, but they're still a force to be reckoned with in the RPG space, that's for sure. And they can still pop out an absolute banger from time to time. Sadly though, for every Parasite Eve, there is another title that would not catch on, if not solely for getting lost in the shuffle. That brings us to the subject of today's video, Threads of Fate. This little forgotten gem of the PlayStation 1 actually had some heavy hitters behind it, as much of the crew behind it worked on Xenogears and even Chrono Trigger. Threads of Fate was a semi-ambitious project, as the team behind it was trying to create a fully 3D rendered game without the need for pre-rendered cutscenes. You know, those FMV style cutscenes the PlayStation 1 was famous for?
Business? What can you possibly accomplish in your condition? You can't even hold your gun steady.
All I'm seeing here is a rehashed Sonic Rush game ported to the consoles. The same ugly, stretched out, green-eyed Sonic fighting the modern-style Eggman.
This meant that Threads of Fate would have to have everything done in-engine. But on the plus side, that meant being able to fit the entire RPG with 2 playable characters on a single disc. If you're younger than 20 watching this might not seem like a big deal. But back then, we were actually used to having to get up mid-game to swap discs for longer games, especially RPGs which were very story-heavy. Threads of Fate would arrive in late 1999 in Japan and 2000 in the US, never officially getting a European release. Sorry to all you out there who missed out on this gem. This meant that the game would hit the scene right when the PlayStation 2 was dazzling the world with superior graphics and capabilities. So it's possible that this was another game that got snubbed for being a late console release that was overshadowed by shinier, newer content releasing at the time. But it's hard to say for certain. Remember, back then, the difference between consoles was night and day. It's not like now where next-gen games don't look very much different than their previous-gen counterparts. Regardless of the reason, Threads of Fate wouldn't be a commercial smash hit, as it sold fairly underwhelming at the time, but that's not a testament to its quality though, as Threads of Fate will surprise you with how great it actually is, and hopefully by the end of this video you'll really want to give this one a try, because it's actually a really interesting piece of RPG history, and a game that I fell in love with after only a few hours. Let's get into why. As already mentioned earlier, Threads of Fate try to do some very ambitious stuff. The story is told entirely through the in-game cutscenes using text rather than voice acting, which might be a letdown to some, but let's not pretend that voice acting back in the PlayStation 1 era wasn't laughably bad.
See if you can find any other clues. I'll be examining this. Hope this is not Chris's blood.
So it's probably a good thing that Threads of Fate wasn't sullied by the voice acting of Barry Burton. This is what I like to call a contained game. They recognized the scope that they were going for and scaled the game accordingly in almost every aspect. Combat is pretty straightforward. It's action combat. You have to dodge attacks and mash the X button to use your weapons. And then you have the triangle button to use your secondary attacks. Both of the playable characters have their own abilities to take advantage of when playing, so you can do something different with each of them. Action RPGs are the best. There's nothing more satisfying than bashing the ever-living hell out of anyone in your path. And Threads of Fate makes that feel very rewarding, just like Kingdom Hearts does. What makes this RPG different, though, is the way you get stronger isn't just simply beating up enemies and then leveling up. Instead, your attack and defense stats are raised by either buying items or paying money to power them up after you defeat enough enemies. This is actually the only real use that money has in this game, as there's no other items outside of the coin items that use to come back from death without facing penalties. No potions, no buff items, none of that. Armor and weapon upgrades are simply permanent upgrades that stack on top of each other whenever purchased, so there's no kerfuffling around with the inventory. The other two stats you can raise, though, are done through a very interesting way. Your HP and MP, which are your health and mana, are raised by doing. After you use spells or special abilities, now your maximum MP will increase little by little. As for health, though, you actually see your health max increase by taking enough damage. So if you actually don't get hit often, your max health will stay relatively low. Which I can imagine can be a fun mechanic if you're trying to do some kind of challenge run. This means, though, that if you're getting hit a lot, then the game will start to give you a little bit more health to work with to make challenges more manageable. I actually really like this system, and of course, if you really want to, you can just pay the shop to increase your MP and HP as well. I actually really like this system, and of course, if you really want to, you can pay the shop to increase your HP and MP as well. So it's not entirely necessary to just stand there and let enemies hit you to grind, but you can if you want to. After all, it is free. Naturally, though, because you can simply grind money and keep buying upgrades, which doesn't seem to ever go up in price, you can basically power level to overcome any challenges that's stopping you from progressing. Which means that this is by no means a super difficult game, but I do genuinely like how the game rewards you for grinding things out. Playing this game feels like a rewarding experience, unlike some games that are an absolute chore to get through.
Wait! Who's Sarah?
My wife. Future wife, that is.
Level design is definitely simplified, though, and you're given a hub to go back to save the game, heal up, progress the story, and choose to which area to go to next. It's not one big connected map like Half-Life, but that's okay, because the areas you go to are diverse and strange, with a bit of platforming involved, albeit some of the platforming is a little bit on the janky side. You can go back and revisit previous areas too to grind out and try to find things that you might have missed, so there isn't as much point of no return in this game. We should probably talk about the penalty for death. As far as PlayStation 1 games go, Threads of Fate is actually pretty progressive in that respect. You know the usual deal. Death requires you going back to the previous save and losing progress. Well, not in Threads of Fate. Instead, you get a series of coins, silver, bronze, and gold, and so on. Each one allows you to come back without losing progress so long as you have one. And each tier affects how much health and MP you return with. Otherwise, you return to the town. But fortunately, these coins are easy to find and the game is fairly generous with them. I found tons even with my first hour of playing. And the game isn't Dark Souls, so you won't find yourself dying constantly unless your dark side fill levels of bad.
Why am I poisoned? Why am I toxic? What?
So shy of being an internet lolcow, you should easily be able to overcome the challenges ahead with enough grinding if you're struggling. That's the best part about RPGs. If the part is too hard, you can come back when you're stronger. Threads of Fate's basic combat is simple, but the special difference between the two playable characters is what makes it interesting. With the male player character, Rue, you can transform into different monsters after defeating them, which not only unlocks unique abilities, but also is necessary to overcome certain obstacles. So there's a bit of puzzle solving involved. Though admittedly, some of the monsters just suck, and I can't see why anyone would ever want to use them. But when you find a few that are actually decent, you will find it's fun to use them. And you know what I always say in these videos?
If it's not fun, why bother?
With the female player character, Mint, the game is a bit different. Instead of turning into monsters, you have access to different magic that you have access to at all times when you unlock the different elements. The drawback, though, is that while Mint has more access to ranged attacks, she hits a lot less hard with her melee attacks, and thus may require you to power up a little bit more if you want to overcome the obstacles in your path. I would honestly say that Mint is like playing the game on a higher difficulty, as I only recall dying a handful of times while playing as Rue, but Mint I find myself stuck on certain bosses from time to time. Still, it's far from impossible challenge-wise. Playing the game as one character leads into the other character's campaign, so you're getting a fresh experience your second time around, as not only does the story change, but also the way the game is played has changed. Significantly as well. So it's worth it to play twice to see everything the game has to offer. The music of this game is decent as well, as it fits the tone of what's going on and has that fantasy RPG feeling that you'd expect from this era of games. Threads of Fate is definitely pretty simplistic in its mechanics, but that's okay. Sometimes it's better to refine the basics rather than recreate the wheel. The last thing I've talked about are the graphics animations, which are pretty damn good for the PlayStation 1. I know looking at this now seems laughable, but think of back then. The fact that the character models had hair and clothing that even moved was pretty cool stuff back then. Along with colorful and interesting environments, the PlayStation 1 is a console that was known for people experimenting with it. And this game definitely is one of those games that played around with what the console could do. That's enough about game design though, it's time to talk about story. Threads of Fate is split into two campaigns, Rue and Mint. Silly names aside, as already mentioned, they play very differently. The two have different stories that are going on simultaneously. Rue is an amnesiac who woke up years ago to be found and taken in by a woman named Claire, who he grew very attached to. A mysterious character known only as the Doll Master shows up one day and defeats Rue and then puts an end to Claire's life. That was 3 years ago. Fast forward to the present day, and Rue is on a quest to find an ancient Aeon relic that brings him to the city of Corona. Aeon relics are ancient artifacts created by the ancients known only as the Aeons. People with tremendous knowledge and capability who all mysteriously left the Earth, leaving behind only a handful of relics of tremendous power. Rue believes the powerful relic hidden in Corona contains the kind of power needed to bring Claire back from the dead. Conversely, we have Mint, a princess from the East who is stripped of her right to the throne by her younger sister Maya. Seeking revenge, Mint sets out to find the Aeon relic so she can achieve her goal of world domination, so that she can get revenge on her sister. Yes, one of the two player characters is actually after world domination. I'd make a joke here, but virtually every character in the game treats her ambitions like a joke already. Rue and Mint end up meeting each other when they go to rescue a local girl who disappeared in the forest named Elena, which leads them to find her father, a researcher named Klaus. That's the premise of the story setup. The rest of the story progresses the traditional way you'd expect from RPGs of the late 90s and early 2000s, talking to the correct characters to initiate the next story segments. That aspect of progressing the game is actually not that difficult to work with, but actual levels and dungeons sometimes are insanely confusing to figure out what it is that you're supposed to be doing, as there's no hints within levels, but with enough trial and error you'll eventually figure out where you have to actually go to get through them. The player finds a mysterious box that gives oddly familiar vibes to me.
The box. You opened it. We came.
It turns out this is actually the key to finding the relic, as inside the box is a mysterious Prima doll, which requires the character to go looking for the missing pieces to return it to its full power. It's not until the player decides to dig deeper that you meet the mysterious witch known only as Fancy Mel. Yes, that's her name, Fancy Mel. I'm not making that up. Mel sends you on the right path, and the players go to collect the remaining pieces needed to complete the Prima doll. Once the doll is complete, Mint's sister Maya shows up to try to prevent you from gaining access to the relic, but she is accompanied by the mysterious Doll Master, who betrays her. It's revealed that he is also a doll like Prima, created by one of the Aeons named Valen to break the seal to the relic known as the Dew Prism, a relic of unimaginable power that was sealed away. The plot twist comes when we discover that Rue is one of the dolls created by Valen to break the seal. Rue turns on his creator and instead tries to convince him to use the relic's power to revive Claire, which Valen does for him, only to trick him as he attempts to use Claire's body to resurrect himself. Defeated by the heroes though, he then attempts to overtake Rue's body but fails. With the power of the Dew Prism, he is defeated once and for all, and Rue makes his escape with Claire along with the help of Mint and Maya. Mint in the end sets out for her next adventure, teasing for a sequel that never happened sadly. The story is pretty basic and simplistic as far as JRPGs go, especially Square Enix, who are known for their ability to overcomplicate even simple matters. But that makes it approachable at least, and I consider that a good thing. There aren't many characters to remember, and the ones you encounter are either funny or genuinely charming, making cutscenes feel interesting, as you genuinely want to know what happens next. There's just a right mix of silly and lighthearted moments with a mix of impactful moments. I wouldn't call it predictable, but I also wouldn't call it an M. Night Shyamalan movie either. There's just enough twists, even if they are fairly basic. It's a real shame that this game didn't get a sequel, because the story was set up so that it could be a standalone, but there was also room for more. It's a shame that Square Enix didn't make it happen, despite Final Fantasy XIII somehow getting 3 entries. Life isn't fair though. If it was, then Icon wouldn't exist, and we'd have some kind of new Chrono Trigger content by now. While I could spend forever and a day wishing for the things that will likely never happen, I suppose it's better to be thankful for what we did get, a serviceable story to accompany a very decent game on the PlayStation 1. There are some differences in the story depending if you played as Rue or Mint, but the end result is about the same. I won't spoil everything, as I definitely think you should give this one a try if you love RPGs. With 2 campaigns, you're already given plenty to work with, but that's not to say that's all that Threads of Fate has to offer. The game is so fun you'll likely want to pop in again just to experience its charming and fun gameplay. And honestly, that's the best kind of replay value. When the game is so fun that you want to play it twice. A feat that is pretty hard for many modern games to achieve, I personally feel.
If it's not fun, why bother?
Threads of Fate has more than just that too, because you get the coveted New Game Plus, where you carry over your progress, unlock new upgrades, new minigames, new stuff across the board, keeping the experience interesting. Honestly, that's a huge win for me, because Square Enix really invented how to do New Game Plus properly, and Threads of Fate continues that trend nicely. There's nothing more satisfying than doing your revenge run with all the Ultra unlocks to go and smack down those enemies in the game that give you a hard time your first time around, and just absolutely decimate your opponents with endgame upgrades. It reminds me a lot of Resident Evil 4, a game that I replayed many times after maxing out my equipment, just to give the enemies who gave me the trouble the first time around the old 1-2. Threads of Fate at the very least will give you 2 playthroughs just to experience playing as both characters, since they both play differently and the stories are different enough to where it makes you curious enough to want to play as both. Personally, I was a big fan of Mint, as it was refreshing to play as a character whose intentions were more selfish, yet is still seen as a hero character somehow. It's better than playing Legacy of Goku 1, that's for sure. If you know, you know. If you don't, I envy you. Anyway, we gotta wrap up the video. Threads of Fate is a game that I've heard about from a few Obscure Gems YouTube videos by smaller YouTubers who insisted on its greatness, and now I completely see why. It is almost criminal that this game got overlooked when it did, though it's clear that it likely came out at a bad time. This game has a nice legacy, and many who worked on it remembered it fondly. It didn't get the sequel it deserved, but there were a few efforts to try to make one materialize as late as 2015. So maybe there's hope that one day seeing this game be given another chance at finding an audience that will appreciate it. A remaster would be a great start, that's for sure, and a remake would be a far better one, but that's far more of a pipe dream. With Square Enix willing to take chances on a lot of stuff, I hope this is one that they give a chance, even if it's a smaller remake project, as I'm sure they're not planning on giving it the Final Fantasy VII treatment. But since the Final Fantasy VII Remake project officially ends next year with the release of the final part of the trilogy, it does open Square Enix up to new projects and ideas. Maybe Threads of Fate getting some attention could be one of those projects. I would definitely rally behind it, and if you enjoyed this video enough to play this game, then by all means make some noise to Square Enix for some kind of return to this game. If we show enough interest, we might be able to get Threads of Fate to make its fated return. It's a long shot, but hey, I'm a guy who dreams for the impossible sometimes. Your dreams don't have to be impossible though, so long as you dream of subscribing to this channel. Hit that subscribe button and your dreams will come true. If you're new to the channel, I do retrospectives on retro or retro-inspired games like this one. Be sure to like the video and comment your thoughts below. Also check out the Discord there in the description. I'm WizPlay, and that's enough of that.